Now, big changes at Meta, one of the world's largest social media companies, because Facebook, Instagram and Threads in the US will no longer have fact-checking and instead rely on community notes generated by users. In a video posted by Meta, Chief Executive Mark Zuckerberg explained the reasoning behind the change.
The recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point towards once again prioritizing speech. So we're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms. More specifically, here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to get rid of fact checkers and replace them with community notes, similar to X, starting in the US. After Trump first got elected in 2016, the legacy media wrote nonstop about how misinformation was a threat to democracy. We tried in good faith to address those concerns without becoming the arbiters of truth. But the fact checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US. So over the next couple of months, we're going to phase in a more comprehensive community notes system.
Well, let's discuss what this may mean for the accuracy of what we see when we're using certain social media sites in the coming weeks and months. We have Orna Young from Fact Check NI. It actually partners with the third-party international fact-checking program whose services have been cancelled by Meta in the US. Orna, good to speak to you on the program. What are your initial thoughts, your initial views on this announcement by Meta?
Well, I think firstly, it's important to point out that this was met with a bit of surprise from the fact-checking community internationally. We weren't given any sense that this was coming practically or in any other way. So we woke up to the news just as everybody else did. I think it's important just to point out the Fact Check, and I have been part of the fact-checking program since 2019. And it's not that everybody can be part of that, to be quite frank. We are drawn from a pool of fact-checking organisations that are independently and internationally audited and verified annually. So we have to prove that we adhere to fundamental principles of impartiality, transparency and accuracy. So we're invited on, as I said, because we have a proven track record, as are those fact checkers in the US. And then what we do, I think it's important to point out what the fact-checking the programme actually does, because from that statement, it's quite easy to be misled. We kind of review viral and potentially false claims on Facebook or Meta, and we can label something as false. Now, that's not to say that we censor it or we have the power to remove it. What we do have is the potential to actually add information to that piece of information or that piece of content. So it gives users additional context, to be quite frank. So I suppose previously the approach of Meta had been to reduce, remove and inform, and our role in that was the inform. So you're using expert fact checkers, expert journalists, expert researchers to do that. It has been a surprise, I think not least to those in the US. And obviously the shadow it casts over fact checking internationally, which is such a huge industry. So
is that your main concern, or in terms of what it might do in terms of the international reputation of fact checking? Because I'm not going to notice anything different when I'm scrolling. Am I? Because obviously this is a US only, but is it more to do with the reputation of fact checkers?
I think fact checkers have lived through a particularly hostile period, particularly since we joined the third-party fact-checking program. When you consider COVID, very protracted election period internationally, mis and disinformation is borderless, and we know that. But linking so blatantly fact-checking to this idea of censorship is especially harmful. And we mean this internationally. We have colleagues who are living under threat. And also, the idea that we have destroyed trust. I think the issue of trust goes much higher than us. And I think I suppose, working so hard to adhere to the principles I just mentioned earlier in terms of transparency and all those things, and being externally audited, we are some of the most transparent organisations you'll meet in terms of our funding and how we work. And it does cast a shadow. It casts a shadow for European fact-checking organisations, absolutely. And, we are watching this very closely.
Kevin Curran, Mark Zuckerberg said this means we're going to catch less bad stuff. And the co-chair of the independent body that reviews Facebook and Instagram content said she's very concerned. this does not sound good, many people will think.
Yeah, but it comes in the wake of Trump's election, where the right seemed to have where Facebook would have been seen as being on the left leaning as well, and blocking and being unfair again, seen by Republicans to them as such again. So that they cited concerns over political bias in the existing fact-checking system again. But we have to note that there's also content moderation again. So people have fears that things relating to suicide and self-injury may be more prominent now on the platform. But Facebook themselves say that no, that the content moderation will go on ahead. And ultimately, they're moving to a community crowdsource kind of wisdom of the crowd approach, which obviously is in effect on Twitter. Again, where people can, people once they're kind of verified on the platform for a number of months as well, are able to add community notes. And in the background, then a number of people who were in the scheme again will vote on stories, giving their opinion whether or not that they, this is helpful or unhelpful. And again, the algorithm itself ultimately will decide again whether to flag an item on Twitter again. So that will apply to Facebook. And of course, these people who posted again will be demonetized for that particular post. So the people who promote community moderation believe that the wisdom of the crowd will exceed any biases within human moderators again. And even Meta themselves have moved the content moderation team from California to Texas again.
Blue
so really
state
what
to
they're doing
red.
is moving it from left to the right again.
Physically.
So bias is incredibly difficult to overcome within humans.
Is it as cynical as Zuckerberg trying to align himself with an incoming administration? Is there anything else going on here?
That is the main factor, because they're under so much scrutiny, under so much regulation. And again, because they kind of bet on the Democrats winning. They really did. And it even is that they were forced into it as well by the Democrat Party again, because they were in power for the last 4 years, whatever else. So that they had to adhere to it. Otherwise, it would have been under strict regulations as well. So really, it's that. But also, you've always got the feeling Zuckerberg himself in public talks as well, always went for a less censorship approach. They didn't want to be seen as the arbiters of truth. Again, and he always himself personally came across that he didn't want to be censoring anything. In other words, he wanted more free speech. So, but his hand was forced by the Democrats. But now, of course, his hand will be forced by the Republicans.
But you've also got the fact that this will probably impact advertising, and he is a businessman. This is a business.
It is, but again, eyeballs again, because unfortunately, with the monetization of posts on all these platforms as well, especially on Twitter again, that sometimes the most contentious will get the most views as well. But of course, we've seen that again, where no one wants to post, or no one wants to advertise a goods beside a racist post or something which is harmful. But it's hard to know. Again, the more eyeballs that see a post, again, that's what advertisers care about, really.
Orna Young, community notes, it can't be that bad.
Do you know what? I've had time to think about it more today. I think in reacting and kind of assimilating what's happened in the last 24 hours. Now, I think that actually community notes could potentially be used to counter false claims, but when they're based on proper expertise and fact-checked work. And that the proof is in the pudding, I suppose. We have, access to research from the States during the 2024 election, where community notes had at best been seen to have an extremely marginal impact on the quality of information available on there. And also there's an issue of transparency with the idea of community notes too. I am very firmly of the belief that we should not be equating facts with opinions. And that's not a reasonable way to kind of go forth, particularly with these platforms who hold so much power in influencing public thought. And I think there's an issue of transparency and impartiality. Could this format, and I'm sure it will be proven in years to come, be subject to abuse, whether that be by bots and who are those bots funded by and put in place by? So I think actually, rather than trying to, I suppose, machinify everything, for want of a better word, there's something about expertise that we need to go back to basics with. And I've heard the word kind of used there, censorship, a bit. And the idea that, he's even raising that is remarkable to us as a fact-checking community, because that was something that was never raised with us. And we don't censor. We add information. We are all about adding information so that to empower people to make informed decisions about issues and in things that impact their lives, I suppose, effectively.
Orna, thank you. That's Orna Young from Fact Check NI, and we also had Kevin Curran, Professor of Cybersecurity at Ulster University.
Amy has the news.